The evening kicked off, like so many before it, wrapped in the warmth of routine. We were curled up on the couch in our snug little apartment, lazily scrolling through a never ending stream of Netflix options. Our banter was light, full of inside jokes and harmless teasing. Even the usual back and forth about what to watch felt oddly comforting. We'd been together for 2 years, a stretch filled with shared memories, easy laughter, and a connection I believed was solid. Sure, we'd hit a few bumps here and there. What couple doesn't? But I always thought we had something genuine, something worth holding on to. But as the night stretched on, something shifted. A subtle, creeping unease began to stir. Her phone kept lighting up, casting brief, cold flashes across the room that clashed with the soft glow of the lamps. At first, I brushed it off. Probably just a friend checking in or a family group chat buzzing. No big deal. But then I noticed the way she smiled at the screen, how fast she'd lock it when I glanced over, and how her whole demeanor suddenly shifted when I was near. It started to gnaw at me. She'd begun placing her phone face down whenever we were together. A tiny act, but one that spoke volumes. It whispered of secrets, of things deliberately kept out of sight. As the images on the screen flickered in front of us, my uneasiness grew louder in my head. I've never thought of myself as jealous, and I'd always taken pride in the trust between us. But something about that night felt different, off. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping through my fingers. Finally, I gathered my thoughts and faced her. My voice was calm, but there was an edge to it I couldn't hide. "So, who's messaging you?" She let out a dramatic sigh and rolled her eyes, brushing me off like I was being ridiculous. "Why are you even asking?" she muttered, irritation creeping into her tone. I inhaled slowly, doing my best to stay composed. "Because we're in this together," I said quietly. "And lately, it feels like you're keeping something from me." She didn't skip a beat, leaning back with a smirk that stung more than I'd like to admit. She folded her arms and said, almost like she was bragging, "There are plenty of guys out there who want me." Time just paused. Her words hit like a slap, and for a moment, I expected her to laugh it off or say she was joking, but she didn't. She simply turned back to her phone, thumbing through it as though nothing had happened, like our exchange was just background noise. And that's when it hit me. A quiet, painful clarity settled in. I'd spent so much time trying to become the man she needed. Always bending, always giving, pouring myself into making her feel cherished, seen, loved. But somewhere along the way, I stopped asking the most important question. What about me? What about my worth? I gave a slow nod as her words settled deep into my chest, hitting places I hadn't armored. "Well," I said quietly, "good to know." My voice didn't carry anger, just that quiet, dull ache that comes from realizing someone you cared for didn't feel the same way. She glanced at me, confused, as if expecting a fight, a scene, but I had nothing left to argue for. I grabbed my keys from the table, turned toward her, and said softly, but with finality, "If a bunch of guys line up to get your attention, I'm sure you won't notice that I'm gone. I'll file for divorce myself." And with that, I walked out. There was a strange clarity in that moment. My steps felt firm, almost purposeful. I half expected her to come after me, to call out, maybe shoot me a quick message, anything to show she cared, even a little. But minutes passed, then hours. And as the night dragged on with no word from her, it hit me. I was truly alone in this. I kept glancing at my phone, heart foolishly hoping for some flicker of regret. Maybe she thought I'd be the one to fold first. Like before, return with an apology, patch it all up after yet another fight. But not this time. This time, I chose knee. The following days were difficult, of course, but at the same time, they brought relief. I was completely immersed in what I had previously neglected. Long sessions at the gym, sitting over a cup of coffee with old friends, time spent in silence, just listening to my own thoughts. There was nothing to share, so a divorce was easier than ordering a burger. Gradually, I began to feel lighter, as if I were regaining parts of myself that I hadn't even suspected. And strangely enough, it felt good, like waking up from a fog. 2 weeks before the day of the divorce, a message appeared on my screen. Hello. Just that. One word, simple, loaded. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen, debating. But then I remembered her smirk, the careless tone in her voice, the way she'd chosen not to stop me from leaving. So, I made my choice. I didn't open it. Letting it sit there, unread, felt like a tiny act of self-respect, a quiet no to all the pain she'd left in her wake. A full month passed before I saw her again. I was out with friends, surrounded by easy laughter, casual stories, the kind of warmth that doesn't ask you to prove yourself. And then she walked in. She looked different, not in the way people change their hair or clothes, but in the way life weighs down on them. Tired, maybe, a little hollow, like regret had finally caught up to her. Our eyes locked across the room, and for a split second, everything froze. It felt like being pulled back in time to when things were uncomplicated. But the look on her face told a different story now. There was something heavy in her expression, something uncertain. When she made her way over, I could sense it, the hesitation in her step, the unspoken apology in her silence. She approached slowly, her steps uncertain, like each one took a bit of courage. When she stopped beside my table, I caught a flicker in her expression. Guilt, maybe, or hope, or some uneasy. "Hi," she said softly. The sound of her voice startled me, not because it was unfamiliar, but because it wasn't the same. The confidence, the edge she once carried so easily, had dulled into something quieter, more hesitant. I gave her a nod, but didn't say anything. Not out of spite, just detachment. Like we were speaking across a distance that couldn't be crossed anymore. She stood there for a moment, fumbling for words, until finally she said, "I was wrong." Her eyes stayed fixed on the glass in front of her, her fingers nervously tapping the rim. I thought I had options. I thought I could find something better. But none of it was real, not like what we had. Those words would have meant everything to me once. There was a time I would have clung to them, treated them like redemption. But now, they just felt like echoes in an empty room. The person I used to be, the one who would have welcomed her back with open arms. Who needed that validation? He wasn't here anymore. "You're right," I said quietly. They weren't real. But I was. She searched my face, hoping, maybe, for forgiveness, for a sign that the door was still open. But I didn't owe her that anymore, and I didn't need to pretend I did. When she reached out for my hand, I instinctively pulled back, not in anger, but as proof of how far I'd come. Then, I turned back to my friends and picked up the thread of our conversation, the laughter, wrapping around me like armor. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel broken. I just felt steady, whole. Later, as I stepped out into the night air, I understood something with clarity I hadn't had before. I wasn't walking away bitter. I was just finally ready. She had believed she had options. But now I did too. And this time, I chose myself.